So picture this. It's the 18th century, and the Hawaiian Islands are, well, they're a battlefield, just a collection of warring chiefdoms. But one man, who was supposedly born under a fiery prophecy, was about to change everything. He was going to use ancient beliefs and powerful, brand new weapons to create a single, unified kingdom. This is the story of Kamehameha the Great. Our story really kicks off back in 1758. Halley's Comet is blazing across the Hawaiian sky, and a prophecy is born right along with it. A child born under this fiery sign, it was said, would be destined to conquer all the other chiefs and unite all the islands. Now, you have to understand, this wasn't just some old story. For the chiefs already in power, this was basically a death warrant. So yeah, you can imagine this prophecy just lit a fire under everyone. The boy who seemed to be its fulfillment was born into a world that pretty much wanted him dead from day one, which kicked off a super perilous childhood where his destiny and imminent danger were basically walking hand in hand. To keep him safe from a paranoid king, the baby was literally whisked away and hidden in the mountains. He didn't even come back to the royal court until he was 5 years old. And that's when he was given the name Kamehameha, which means the lonely one. But then as a teenager, he did something incredible. He lifted the Naha stone, this massive volcanic rock that legend said could only be moved by the one true person who would unite the islands. Now, look, this wasn't just about being the strongest guy in the room. It was all about this concept of mana, a kind of spiritual power, a life force that grants you authority and the right to rule. And by lifting that Naha stone, Kamehameha was basically screaming to the world that he possessed a huge amount of mana. For the people, this was a massive sign. This was the guy. This was the man from the prophecy. So Kamehameha grows up. He becomes this towering, incredible warrior, super loyal to his uncle, who's the king. But the whole balance of power in Hawaii was about to get completely shattered, and not by a local rival, but by these strange, huge ships that appeared on the horizon, from a world away. In 1778, Captain James Cook arrives, and his timing is perfect. He shows up during the Makahiki festival, which is a sacred time for the god Lono. The Hawaiians, thinking Cook is Lono, welcome him with all these lavish gifts. But then a storm forces Cook's ship to turn back and return a year later. And, well, the party's over. The welcome mat is gone. All that's left is suspicion and, eventually, aggression. The tension just boils over and finally explodes. It all started over a stolen boat, if you can believe it. Cook tries to take the king hostage. The whole beach just erupts into a standoff. A pistol shot rings out, stones start flying, and in all that chaos, Captain Cook is overwhelmed and killed by the warriors. And watching this whole thing happen is the young Kamehameha. What he saw that day changed him forever. He watched as just a handful of Cook's men were able to hold back a massive crowd with the incredible, thunderous power of muskets and cannons. It was a lesson in a new kind of power that he would never, ever forget. And that lesson, well, it pretty much became his guiding strategy for the rest of his life. When his uncle's death kicked off a civil war, Kamehameha knew his spiritual power, his mana, wasn't going to be enough to win. He needed firepower. The war against his cousin was just unbelievably brutal. We're talking up-close and personal fighting with shark-toothed daggers and heavy war clubs. It was vicious. And for almost 10 years, the island was just stuck in this bloody stalemate. Kamehameha really needed a new edge. And fate, it seems, delivered that edge in a very unexpected way. Through a couple of violent run-ins with some trading ships, 2 Western sailors, Isaac Davis and John Young, were captured and brought right to Kamehameha. Now, instead of just executing them, Davis and Young were given a choice. Teach my army how to use your weapons or, face the consequences. So they agreed, and they actually ended up becoming his most loyal and trusted advisors. They didn't just teach his men how to shoot. They introduced European military tactics, and they transformed his warriors into this terrifying hybrid fighting force. I mean, just stop and think about that combination for a second. On one hand, he has the spiritual authority from the prophecy, his immense mana, and on the other hand, he has the technological superiority of cannons and muskets. He was a completely new kind of warrior chief, and he was about to unleash his new army on the world. And if you want to know just how horrific the result was, look no further than this. During his invasion of Maui, he cornered the enemy army in the Iao Valley. The battle was so one-sided, so completely devastating, that the cannon and musket fire piled up so many bodies in the river that it was said the water itself literally stopped flowing. The battle's name became Kapaniwai, which means the damming of the waters. So, having secured his home island and proven without a doubt the terrifying might of his new army, Kamehameha turned his eyes to the rest of the islands. His entire campaign would come to a head in one last, decisive, and incredibly brutal battle on the island of Oahu. So here we go. In 1795, Kamehameha lands on Oahu with an army of 10,000 warriors. And using a flanking maneuver taught to him by his Western advisors, he completely surprises and overwhelms the island's defenders, pushing them farther and farther back through the Nuuanu Valley. The Oahu warriors were driven back until they had absolutely nowhere left to go. They were literally cornered at the edge of a sheer cliff. Many were forced right over the edge, while others chose to jump rather than be captured. A century later, when workers were building a road, they found over 800 skulls at the base of that cliff. A pretty grim reminder of just how final that battle was. So with every other island now conquered, only Kauai remained. Its king, seeing what happened everywhere else, faced Kamehameha's unstoppable army and made the smart choice. He submitted peacefully. And just like that, the prophecy was fulfilled. Kamehameha founded the Kingdom of Hawaii, uniting all the islands under a single ruler for the first time in their entire history. His dynasty would go on to turn Hawaii into a recognized world power, a legacy that, even after the monarchy was illegally overthrown by the U.S. in 1893, is still celebrated by Native Hawaiians today. Which leaves us with a really fascinating question to chew on, right? Was Kamehameha's rise really just destiny? Was he the fulfillment of a prophecy that was written in the stars? Or was he a brilliant and maybe even ruthless strategist who saw exactly which way the tides of history were turning and was simply the first one to figure out how to master the violent power of a new world?